My daughter died in 2009. Then this photo showed up. The photo arrived on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were always Sarah's days. Tuesday was library day in 2009, the year she died. I found it propped against the front door, a glossy 8x10 face down against the painted wood. My first thought was wrong delivery. Junk mail usually ended up jammed halfway in the mailbox. This was deliberate. I picked it up. The glossy surface felt cold against my fingertips. I flipped it over. It took a second for my brain to catch up. It was a screenshot clearly taken from a local news website. A fender bender on Elm Street, barely worth mentioning. But behind the two crumpled cars, blurred but unmistakable, stood a girl who looked exactly like Sarah. Except Sarah would be 15 now, and this girl was. My Sarah died in June 2009, a few weeks after her 7th birthday. Hit by a car, a senseless accident. A blind spot. Reckless driver, a moment of inattention on my part. The details were etched into my memory, sharp as glass. I checked the date on the news report. 2 weeks ago, Sarah was still dead. I went inside, my hands shaking. I needed to sit down. The photo trembled in my grip as I lowered myself onto the worn leather of my armchair. The house felt colder than usual, a chill that seeped into my bones. Denial was the first wave. It had to be a mistake. A cruel joke, someone who looked like her. But the angle of her jaw, the slight gap between her front teeth, the way her hair curled just above her left ear, it was Sarah. I grabbed my phone and enlarged the image, pixelating it further, searching for any imperfection, any flaw that would shatter the illusion. Nothing. The girl in the photo was the spitting image of my dead daughter, only 8 years older. I called Emily my therapist. Her voice was calm, measured, the voice she always used when I was teetering on the edge. David, take a deep breath. It's likely a coincidence. Lookalikes exist. We've talked about this, about how grief can play tricks on the mind. Emily, you don't understand. It is her. David, she sighed gently. Let's talk about this more during our session tomorrow. For now, try to distract yourself. Watch a movie, read a book, anything to take your mind off it. Distract myself. How could I distract myself when a photo of my dead daughter, alive and well, had just materialized on my doorstep? I hung up and stared at the photo again. The news report was from Channel 7, their website plastered with the logo. I found the original report online. The video footage was grainy, but there she was for a split second, caught in the background, staring directly at the camera. At me. I rewound the video, pausing it, zooming in. Her expression was unsettling. Not happiness, not sadness, just a blank, almost vacant stare. It sent a shiver down my spine. I knew I had to go there, to Elm Street, to the scene of the accident. Elm Street hadn't changed much in 15 years. The same quaint shops lined the street, the same brick sidewalks. I found the spot where the accident had happened, marked by a faded spray-painted X on the asphalt. The memory slammed into me, visceral and raw. Sarah, running into the street, chasing a ball, the screech of tires, the sickening thud. I spent hours that afternoon walking the street, showing the photo to shop owners, asking if they recognized her. Most shook their heads, politely dismissing me as another grieving father lost in his own world. One woman, the owner of a small bookstore, paused. She squinted at the photo. I think I might have seen her. A few weeks ago. She came in here looking for a specific book. Something about folklore. Folklore. Sarah had always loved fairy tales, but folklore. Did she say anything else? Anything about who she was? The woman frowned. No, she was very quiet, almost withdrawn. Just asked for the book and left. The book. I had to find out what book she was looking for. That night, sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face in the photo, that unsettling, blank stare. I dreamt of the accident, the endless loop of horror playing out in my mind. The next morning, I went back to the bookstore. The owner, Mrs. Davison, remembered me. I checked my records, she said, pulling out a dusty ledger. The book she asked for was New England Folklore and Legends. It's a pretty obscure title. I practically ripped the book from her hands. The pages were yellowed, the binding cracked. I flipped through it, my heart pounding. Nothing seemed immediately relevant, just stories of witches, sea monsters, and haunted houses. Then I saw it. A small hand-drawn sketch in the margin of one page. A tall, slender figure with no face lurking in the shadows. Beneath the sketch, a single word, Tallman. Tallman. Sarah used to talk about the Tallman when she was little. An imaginary friend, she said. A friend who lived in the woods behind our house. Susan, my late wife, had dismissed it as childhood fantasy. But now, I went back home and started searching through Sarah's old things, packed away in boxes in the attic. Toys, clothes, school projects, memories, both bitter and sweet. And then I found it. A small leather-bound journal hidden beneath a pile of coloring books. Sarah's journal. The early entries were childish scribbles about school and friends. But as I flipped through the pages, the tone shifted. The entries became darker, more unsettling. She wrote about the Tallman not as a friendly playmate, but as something sinister. The Tallman watches me, one entry read. He says he wants to play a game, but I don't want to play. He says he'll be sad if I don't. Another entry, the Tallman says I have to keep a secret that will keep us together forever. I felt a cold dread creep over me. This wasn't the innocent fantasy of a child. This was something else. Something wrong? I found a drawing tucked inside the back cover, a detailed picture of the Tallman. He was even taller and thinner than I imagined, his limbs elongated and distorted, and where his face should have been there was only a swirling void. I called Detective O'Connell. He was the lead investigator on Sarah's case back in 2009. He'd retired a few years ago, but I still had his number. He sounded weary when he answered the phone. "David, what is it?" "It's been a long time. I need your help, Michael. It's about Sarah." I told him about the photo, the bookstore, the journal, the Tallman. He listened patiently, his silence unnerving. "David," he said finally, "I understand you're going through a lot, but what you're describing, it sounds like you're grasping at straws. Sarah's gone. We have to accept that. I can't accept it, Michael, not when there's a photo of her alive and well, not when there's a connection to this Tallman." He sighed. "All right, David, I'll look into it, but I'm making no promises, and I think you should seriously consider talking to Emily again." O'Connell, bless his soul, actually looked at the news footage I sent him. It took him a week, but he drove up to my house. He didn't say what he'd been doing other than some digging. "David," he said, "that picture. I showed it to some of my old contacts, digital forensics and such. They say it isn't photoshopped. Whatever that image is, it's there. It's real. I've reopened the case. I felt a flicker of hope, a tiny spark in the darkness. O'Connell interviewed Mrs. Davison at the bookstore, then went to speak with Maggie Olson, the old neighbor who lived across the street from us back in 2009. Maggie had always been a recluse, a strange, eccentric woman who everyone dismissed as a crazy old lady. But Sarah had liked her, and Maggie had claimed to have seen something on the day Sarah died. When I went to visit Maggie myself, her house was even more dilapidated than I remembered. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged, and the yard was overgrown with weeds. She peered at me through the crack in the door, her eyes wide and wary. I told them everything, she rasped, her voice barely a whisper. "The police, they didn't believe me." "Believe what, Maggie? What did you see?" She hesitated, her gaze darting nervously around the yard. "The Tallman," she whispered. "I saw him. He was standing in the woods watching Sarah. Just before it happened. Did you see the car? The accident?" "No," she shook her head. "I just saw him. And then I heard the scream. The scream. I could still hear it in my nightmares." "Maggie, did you ever see him with Sarah before? Did you ever see them talking?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, sometimes. Sarah would go into the woods and he would be there, tall and dark, always watching." I pressed her for more details, but she clammed up, her eyes filled with fear. "I can't," she said, her voice trembling. "He doesn't like it when I talk about him." I left Maggie's house feeling more confused and terrified than ever. The Tallman, what was he? An imaginary friend turned malevolent? A figment of Sarah's overactive imagination, or something else entirely? O'Connell called me. "David, I need you to come down to the station." At the station, O'Connell told me Maggie Olson was more forthcoming with him. The detective's charm probably worked on the old woman. She was more forthcoming with him. She had said that Sarah had a special hiding place. She wasn't sure where it was, but it was in the woods near my old house. That night, armed with a flashlight and a map of the woods, I went searching. The woods were dark and silent, the trees casting long, menacing shadows. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent my heart racing. I followed the old trails, retracing the steps I used to take with Sarah when she was little. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The silence was broken only by the hooting of an owl in the distance. And then I saw it. A small, overgrown path leading off the main trail, a path I didn't remember ever seeing before. I hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and plunged into the darkness. The path was narrow and winding, overgrown with thorns and vines. I pushed through the dense vegetation, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Finally, the path opened into a small clearing, and in the center of the clearing I saw it. A root cellar. Half buried in the earth, the stone walls covered in moss and ivy. A rickety wooden door hanging off its hinges. This had to be it. Sarah's hiding place, the place where she met with the Tallman. I approached the root cellar cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. The air around it felt heavy, oppressive. I reached out and pushed open the door. The cellar was dark and damp, the air thick with the smell of mildew and decay. I shined my flashlight inside, my beam sweeping across the stone walls. And then I saw her, standing in the corner, bathed in the dim light. Sarah, but not the Sarah I remembered, not the 7-year-old girl who died in 2009. This Sarah was older, 15 years old, just like in the photo. She turned to face me, her eyes blank and empty. Her face was pale, her skin almost translucent. She looked wrong. "Sarah," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Is that really you?" She didn't answer. She just stared at me, her expression unchanging. And then I saw him, standing behind her in the shadows, the Tallman. He was even taller and thinner than I imagined, his limbs impossibly long and spindly. His face was still a void, a swirling vortex of darkness. He reached out a long, skeletal hand and placed it on Sarah's shoulder. "She's ours now," he rasped, his voice a hollow echo. "She belongs to us." I stepped back in horror, my mind reeling. This couldn't be real, it had to be a nightmare, but it was real. Sarah was there standing before me, alive but changed. And the Tallman was there, his presence radiating an aura of pure evil. "What have you done to her?" I cried, my voice filled with anguish. "What do you want?" The Tallman tilted his head, his faceless gaze fixed on me. "We want to play," he said. "We want to play a game of forever." And then Sarah smiled. A slow, unsettling smile that sent a shiver down my spine. "Come play with us, Daddy." That's when the dream started, or at least that's what I told myself. It had to be a dream. The alternative was too much to bear. I woke up in my bed, drenched in sweat. The sun was streaming through the windows. The house was quiet, peaceful. I got up and went downstairs, trying to convince myself that it was all just a nightmare, a product of my grief and exhaustion. But then I saw it, lying on the kitchen counter. A photograph. It was a picture of me standing in front of the root cellar. My face was contorted in fear, my eyes wide with terror, and behind me in the shadows I could see them, Sarah and the Tallman, smiling. I don't know how much time passed before I could move. I think my mind just shut down. Eventually I got the car started and drove to the state police barracks. I wanted O'Connell, but he'd gone home for the night. I talked to a sergeant who was polite, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. He took a report and told me to go home, get some sleep. He'd look into it in the morning. Sleep was out of the question. I drove back to my house, every nerve on high alert. I checked every room, every closet, under every bed. Nothing. The house was empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I spent the rest of the night sitting in my armchair, clutching a baseball bat, waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. As dawn approached, I started to feel a little calmer. Maybe it was all just in my head. Maybe I was finally losing it. Then I heard it. A faint scratching sound at the front door. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I gripped the baseball bat tighter. The scratching continued, growing louder, more insistent. I crept to the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the doorknob. I took a deep breath and threw it open. Standing on my doorstep was a little girl. She was about 7 years old, with long blonde hair and blue eyes. She was wearing a white dress stained with mud and blood. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and innocent. "Hello, Daddy," she said. "The tall man says it's my turn to play now." And that's when I knew it wasn't a dream. It was real, and it was just beginning. I slammed the door shut, but it was too late. I knew she was already inside. I could hear her giggling, a high-pitched, chilling sound that echoed through the house. I ran upstairs, grabbing my phone and dialing 911. "Emergency," the dispatcher said. "What is your location?" "I need help," I said, my voice trembling. "There's someone in my house. A little girl, sir. Please calm down and tell me your address." I gave her my address, but as I was speaking, the phone went dead. I looked down at the phone. The screen was blank, no signal. I threw the phone against the wall in frustration. It shattered into pieces. I was alone. I could hear the little girls giggling again, closer this time. I grabbed the baseball bat and started searching the house, room by room. The giggling was coming from the living room. I crept towards the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath and threw it open. The living room was empty, but then I saw it. A small hand-drawn picture lying on the floor. It was a picture of me hanging from a tree, and standing beneath the tree holding hands were the little girl and the Tallman. I screamed, a scream of pure, unadulterated terror, and then everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed. My head was pounding, my body aching. I was hooked up to machines, my arm connected to Enroman 4 drip. A doctor entered the room, his expression grave. "Mr. Harding," he said, "you've been through a lot. You were found unconscious in your home. You've been in a coma for 3 days. What happened?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "The little girl, the Tallman," the doctor frowned. "Mr. Harding, there was no little girl, no Tallman. The police found you alone in your house. They believe you suffered a psychotic break. But it was real," I insisted. "I saw them. They were there." The doctor shook his head sadly. "Mr. Harding, I think you need to accept that this was all in your head. You've been through a terrible trauma. It's understandable that you're struggling to cope." He prescribed me some medication and told me to rest, but I knew he was wrong. It wasn't in my head. It was real. Sarah was out there, and the Tallman was with her. I had to find them. I had to save her. I discharged myself from the hospital against the doctor's advice. I went back to my house, determined to find some answers. The house was exactly as I had left it, except for one thing. The photograph of Sarah standing in the background of the news report. It was gone. I searched the entire house, but I couldn't find it anywhere. It had vanished. As I stood there, staring at the empty space where the photograph had been, I heard a faint whisper. "Come play with us, Daddy." The whisper seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It echoed in my mind, chilling me to the bone. I knew then that I would never be free. The Tallman had taken Sarah, and now he had taken me too. I was trapped in his game forever. The last thing I remember is walking into the woods towards the root cellar. I don't know what happened after that. I only know that I'm still here somewhere, lost in the darkness, waiting for the game to begin again. I found another photo today, pushed under my door. This time it's a picture of O'Connell standing in front of his house. He looks happy. Behind him, barely visible in the shadows, stands a tall, thin figure. No face, just a void.